Hello, everyone, and welcome to WP Roundtable. We have another great episode, and I'm a little confused right now because people are confusing me with acronyms and stuff, but I'm Jason Crawford. I'm coming to you from Medellin, Colombia, and that's me.
Whoa.
Somebody said we were ready.
We are ready.
Okay.
I'm Kellen Mace. I'm a developer for 10up. Glad to be on tonight for another episode of the Roundtable with Krogsgard.
Hi, I'm Marc Benzakein. I'm here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where we actually have sun for a change, and I work with WordPress, makers of Desktop Server.
Hey, what's up, people of the web? My name is Kyle. I do stuff with WordPress here in Jackson, Michigan. It's a great place, and we've got sun as well. I'm really excited about episode 57 here on WP Roundtable. We've got a very special guest, somebody that I've wanted to have on the show for pretty much since before we had a show. Mr. Brian Krogsgard. He's the author and creator of one of the best WordPress sites out there that exists. Maybe the best. I don't know. It's hard to say. But if you believe it, I won't argue with you. Post status is pretty incredible, and so is Brian. So, Brian, why don't you real quick just kind of introduce yourself, and we've got a lot of questions for you, buddy.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me, y'all. I appreciate the intro, Kyle. Like you said, I'm a writer, developer, creator of Post Status, which is a WordPress news and information website. It's a free blog with a membership component that I launched in January. And right now there are a little over 300, I think around 316, 320 members that talk WordPress, and I send a newsletter every day, and we have profiles, all the little things. But that is my full-time job, and it's a lot of fun. So I'm happy to be here and talk to y'all about WordPress stuff.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. We're really, really happy to have you here. This is a pretty special episode in my book. So before we get to all these questions that we've got for Brian, because the world wants to know more about you, we're going to cover our quick picks of the week real quick. This is a part of the show where everybody talks about something interesting that they've discovered or learned about the past week they want to share with everybody. So my quick pick of the week, I'm a pretty active participant in the WordPress TV team. It's a small team of people who volunteer time to help make WordPress.tv, the website that showcases amazing videos about WordPress, people giving presentations all over the world. It's an incredible website. If you don't know about it, check it out. But the WordPress TV team does things like moderate the videos that goes on the site and work on making the site better. And currently, they're putting out, the team are putting out a call for people to contribute tutorial-style videos regarding WordPress, especially videos pertaining to the WordPress admin interface. This could be screencasts. We have a spreadsheet. You can go to join our chats I'm in Eastern time, but every Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. I don't know what UTC time that is, but we talk about WordPress TV, and one of our current initiatives is to get more tutorial-style videos of the WordPress admin. We have kind of a cool project that we're working on as a team to help beginner users, and WordPress TV is kind of our delivery channel for that. So you can learn more about that by clicking on the links that I will shortly paste into the event and show notes. So thank you. That's my pick of the week.
Okay, I'll go next. So we already have this great panelist with us, Marc, and he joined us after his interview with us on Desktop Server. And I'm going to shamelessly promote him for a moment because last week he was kind enough to get on a Google Hangout and explain to some of us idiots what Desktop Server and ServerPress actually can do for you. And I learned a lot, and even though I've been using the product for a while, it has actually changed my development flow. So they've recently done a 3.8 release, which does some really cool stuff. It's like got plugins and all types of really cool stuff. So I'd say check that out because it's great. Sorry, I don't have to train the tiger voice.
Okay. Thank you for that, Jason. I guess I'll go next so that I can say thank you, and then I can move on to my pick of the week, which is it's actually a best practice pick of the week, which is please, 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 please always back up your data. You can back up your WordPress site. There are free plugins on the repository like Duplicator. Then there's backup products that will let you set up schemes to do your backing up for you, so you don't even have to think about it, like Backup Buddy. There's BackWP Up. There's a whole bunch of them, but please do it. We every once in a while run into support issues where people have not backed up their data, and I highly recommend that you do it. Period. That's all I have to say about that. Thank you.
You're welcome. Cool, Mark. Thanks. I'll dive in next with my pick of the week. Mine is a kind of developer-centric pick of the week this week. It's a Chrome extension called Postman REST client. It's for developers who want to work with some REST API that's out there on the web and see what it returns without actually coding something up first, just to see the type of thing that it returns, if that makes sense. So you can plug in some data, where you want it to connect to, what info you're requesting, and then just hit one button, and it'll kind of monitor what comes back even before you start coding anything, so you know kind of what to expect. So that's pretty cool. I hadn't run into a tool like that before, and I'm going to be making use of it on a upcoming project pretty soon here. So Brian, we'll turn it over to you next here. You have a pick of the week to share with us?
Sure. My pick of the week is more businessy. Last week, Adi Pinar, who is a co-founder of Woo Themes, but he exited Woo Themes in late 2013, sold his share of the company to Mark and Magnus. And since then, he's kind of gone the serial entrepreneur route, started a couple of things. One didn't go as well, but he's got a newish thing called Receiptful that's doing pretty well. And he just announced recently that he raised $500,000 in seed funding. What was interesting about that is that Automatic CEO and WordPress co-founder Matt Mullenweg and Envato CEO Khalis Taid both were investors, 2 of 21 investors. Some other people that you might recognize are like Buffer's Joel, whatever his last name is, the founder of Buffer, and some other well-known names in the startup space. Put in some money to back Adi and his venture with Receiptful, which is right now a e-commerce receipts company to help you send custom receipts and track analytics and include upsells and things like that. So I thought it was interesting. Adi has got a pretty nice hit on his resume with Woo Themes and being a central force of WooCommerce, even though he exited before it really exploded. But he was kind of the point man when it came around. So it'll be interesting to see how he does with Receiptful, and also how he does with a SaaS that has venture funding compared to bootstrapping his own thing. I covered this in our on the member side of Post Status, and I just thought it was a interesting little tidbit of news, something a little new for the WordPress world, is people taking funding like that. So that's what I got.
Thanks, Brian. That's pretty interesting stuff. Definitely a cool article. Thanks for covering that. And yeah, that is kind of really intriguing news. All right. So at this point, we want to learn a little bit more about you, Brian. And we've got a lot of questions. We want to talk about kind of a small variety of topics. But first off, it'd be really nice if you could go into your background just a little bit and get us up to speed with, the road you took to get to where you are. Maybe what other career pursuits you had prior to deciding to dive into Post Status, and maybe just bring us up to present day.
Sure. Like most people, I didn't go to school for being a WordPress developer. I went to Auburn, War Eagle, right there, and did industrial engineering in my undergrad. The only other industrial engineer from Auburn you may have heard of is probably Tim Cook. He's from my home state, and he is a fellow IE from Auburn, so I will never surpass his greatness, unfortunately. But I loved it there, loved industrial engineering, and I went into manufacturing from there. And I actually was a sales engineer, which means you do like sales and project management in the manufacturing world. And that gave me a lot of actually really good experience for doing web development stuff. And I was just doing web as a hobby, And then in 2011, I had an opportunity to go full-time doing web work for a local agency here. And I really didn't know if I was prepared. It turned out I knew enough to get along, and worked there for a couple years. Then I worked for Range for a little over a year, doing more catered WordPress stuff for big publishers and stuff like that. And in both instances, my background really helped out in terms of understanding project management, being able to talk to clients, as having done like sales and client management in my previous job. And I was really able to kind of bridge that gap between the development side and that was really, really beneficial for doing the client work that I did. In December this last year, I left Range in order to spend the next month giving it a go for Post Status. I'd been running Post Status for almost 2 years as just a free blog, link sharing, news, stuff like that. But I really had to either let go of Post Status to focus on my role at Range, which was kind of the director of operations, and I was doing a lot of development still, but I was also managing a lot of our project management and sales processes over there. And they're great people and had a lot of fun. I just couldn't do both. And I had an opportunity to take Post Status full-time based on some feedback that I got. So I spent about a month building out the system where it ended up being structured between a partner system, so upfront yearly paid advertisers, and a membership system where people pay $100 a year for members-only access to the site, which has a newsletter and some resources and profiles and some of these types of things. And so far, it's gone really well. The upfront partners really helped me float it for a little bit in case the membership's bombed. So that was that helped alleviate some of the risk. And if the membership's bombed, then I could have gone and gotten a job and it been a part-time thing, and I just would have catered to those partners, and that would have been fine. Fortunately, we're going strong. Over a member per day is kind of the rate that people are joining. And I spend my days looking up and researching WordPress news, interesting things that really cater towards people that make their living with WordPress. So that's my ideal customer, somebody that has a product or does client work or is some type of publisher with WordPress. And I have a broad definition of publisher, whether they're publishing words or using code to help others publish. That's really the type of people that I try to serve. So anything that's going to be interesting to them. It could be anything from a showcase of an interesting WordPress site to a really in-depth post about a development procedure or something. So that's what I do, and it's going really well, and I hope it keeps going really well.
So do we, and all of us, I think, are big fans of Post Status, and have been for a long time. I was certainly reading Post Status long before I heard the great news that you were going to be dedicating your entire work week towards making it better and providing more valuable content to the community. It's really awesome. So when I read that post about you deciding to do that, I was really excited, and I think a lot of other people were as well.
Yeah, honestly, I didn't know if I was going to be able to go 100% full-time on it or not. But it turned out that the things that I need to do on a day-to-day basis pretty much take a full-time commitment, considering what I'm promising members and partners. So so far the money has been good enough to where it can replace full-time income. So I haven't actually done client work since I started it, though my plan was to maybe do 50-60% Post Status and 40 or 50% either client work or consulting or something. But I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to go the full year without taking on any client projects.
That's amazing. So we commend you for that. That's quite a feat. I'm sure there are just not too many people out there who could do that.
Our space has a lot of people that have made the transition to products, especially, and it's really interesting. There's a whole new set of challenges when you're talking about getting and keeping customers that pay you smaller dollars than selling and performing $10 to $20, $30,000 web projects. It's really interesting, but different dynamic.
Well, certainly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about your model, the model that you decided that you were gonna try, and it worked, what you envisioned. But I want to know, like, how did you decide this is the model that I'm going to attempt, and why did you decide that this is the best one? And were there others and variations on it that you were thinking about and decided not to go that route?
Yeah, absolutely. It's new to WordPress News being a membership model like this, or a hybrid membership model, membership and partnership. And partner is a fancy word for ads, but not totally. I can't be like fully editorial on one side and business on the other, like in terms of like ad and editorial, like you have in a traditional news environment. So with the partners that I have, it's literally I recommend these people, and that's a small but important difference, I think, because I can recommend the people that I'm accepting money from, and that's why I set it up as a partner model, and it's fully upfront like that. And the reason I did a yearly upfront membership is, one, and I'll be totally transparent, that's $2,500 times 12 partners for the year. So that's $30,000 that was enough to float me while I try to get this thing up and running. And then in addition to that, I did $100 a year for the members model. And the main deliverable, what I call the meat of the membership, is the daily-ish newsletter. So I send that 4 to 5 times a week. And it's a newsletter with links, curation, sometimes it's independent thoughts. Today I actually wrote 900 words that were for members only on why I think a slow WordPress admin is a liability for the project. But sometimes I'll write 50 words and link to something I like. But in the end, the meat of the membership is sending that newsletter out to people, and also a Slack community that was afterthought. But now there's, most of the people that have joined are in this Slack channel where we talk about all sorts of stuff. There's a generic channel, there's a business channel, there's a life channel for people that just need a water cooler, freelancers that need somebody to talk to, and it's been really awesome. And the reason I made it $99 for the year versus maybe like $10 a month or something is when you try to compete with like Netflix, it's really hard. Because what if somebody gets busy with client work for a month and they're not reading your newsletter that month because they just can't focus on anything but the project they're trying to get out the door? But on the whole, for the year, they'll probably look back and they'll be like, I really liked Amazon Prime because I shipped all my Christmas presents with it, and that was alone worth $100. So that's kind of the thing I'm going at it with, is like I want people to be able to add up the various features and think like, I got value out of that, I'm going to renew. So that's kind of why I went with that, because I don't want to have to deal with that monthly churn and questioning of should I renew or should I not every single month. I want somebody, it's a little harder to sell, but I want them to decide, and then they get it for a year and they don't have to think about it again. And then at the end of the year that they've been a member, they decide again. And that's something that I heard from a couple people that have done membership sites before, and it's something I would recommend anyone else doing a membership site to think about. How people are going to compare your service to other things in their lives that may have nothing to do with the niche that you're in.
That's awesome. So here we are. We've already jumped into what you're doing with WordPress, but I wanted to take a step back and ask you, I know you talked about your college days and getting into your first jobs in web development. How did you come across WordPress? What made you love it, and where was it at the time that you came across it?
I wanted to create a website, just like anybody else. My first one was I wanted to create like an Auburn student news website, and then I did. I found Justin Tadlock's Theme Hybrid, and just tinkering, learned how to install themes and do widgets and all this kind of stuff. This is probably around WordPress 2.8, 2.7. 2008 was my initial introduction, I believe. And then, you get distracted, you do other things. But then when I moved to Birmingham, I was kind of like, Birmingham needs a culture site. So I wanted to do like a Birmingham culture website for youngish people that wanted to find good restaurants to go to, and have another blog, same type of thing. And really, these led into what Post Status eventually became. But instead of for where I lived or the local communities I was in, for the WordPress community. And it's always, for me, been about writing. I discovered that I really love writing, and I became a developer so that I could enable myself to write in the platforms that I wanted to write in. But Post Status is really the first idea that ever, worked.
Brian, so when did you discover that you liked writing so much? Was it something that you had always done as a kid, and kind of grew up doing it, or did you just kind of happen into it, like in college you like wrote everybody's research papers for them, or what?
Yeah, I was always the kid that was pretty good at math and science. That's why I was initially interested in engineering. I even remember telling my 7th grade English teacher, this is being a total douche, I told her that I hated writing and I hated English, and she was my English teacher. I'm sure she would be pretty humored that I write for a living now, and I also love reading. But I think probably starting to read more became my influence for wanting to write, and also just having an interest in things around me and information in the news, politics, whatever's going on in my community. Those really, really are what influenced me to want to write more, because I realized, hey, I have opinions on this, and instead of just spouting them off at the lunch table, what if I write them down? So just a desire to do that. And actually, one of the first things I started blogging about, which is kind of embarrassing but not too bad, was Alabama politics. I was just riffing on people that were running for office here locally. And it was this really great, tiny blog on WordPress, but like the Alabama state legislators would read it, and it was hideous. And it was on the Atahualpa or whatever. You remember that thing, that theme that was like 900 options? I can't remember how do you pronounce it. Anyway, so I emailed this guy. I was like, dude, I can help you with your WordPress theme. This is terrible. And that kind of led into actually writing about the local campaigns that were going on. And I mean, local elections are hilarious, but people read this guy's blog, and I started just writing about these elections in the gubernatorial election in 2010. That was the first time I realized that if you just write things that are decent, you become a respected source in your little niche, then you can make a difference. And people read, not a lot of people, but important people read this guy's political blog, and then I just started helping him out, and then I just started writing for him. It was around the same time I started writing about WordPress, because I was learning more about WordPress, and I just wanted to write what I was learning. So I wrote on WP Candy for about 2 years, just because I emailed him and was like, hey, here's a post. If you want to put it up, put it up. If you don't, then I'll put it on my own blog. And lo and behold, people really like when you contribute free articles to their WordPress website. So that's how I got involved, and I just haven't stopped. I just have this weird desire to share things that I'm learning.
It's really great, Brian. I've heard you in other interviews say that phrase it, in this way, that writing is the way that you have always learned about WordPress, right? So to continue learning, you have to continue writing, and that's kind of what you've done, I think, with Post Status, right?
Yeah. Yeah,
very cool.
My grandpa, I remember him telling me when I was, 10 years old probably, I don't know, but he said, learn something new every day to make up for all the things that you forget. And I certainly forget more than I learn, but I think just having this culture of learning in your life is really helpful and gives you new perspectives over time. That helps us mature and get smarter over time and stay fresh with whatever we're doing.
Yeah, well, very cool. I'm interested to learn a little bit more about the Post Status Club, the paid membership. Would you say that we touched on it a little bit? Would you say that the content is all that different? Is it that you're trying to, with the free content cater to those who might just be stepping into, a role doing WordPress full time, whether that's running their own business or working for an agency or whatever else? Whereas with the paid membership, the content changes a bit to those who maybe have been doing it for longer or more experienced, or is it just more of it? How does it change?
Yeah, I mean, to a degree. The free content tends to have a broader appeal. My last post was based on a talk that Nason did at LoopConf, and it was very technical. But it does have a broad appeal because it was about emoji support and where all that came from. I don't know if y'all read it, but it's called the Trojan emoji. And it takes a pretty decent level of understanding to get it, but it was an important story for WordPress and how over a 2-year period this strange security issue was solved. So in that sense, it was a very broad appeal. Sometimes, though, like today with the WordPress admin one, I would love for more people to read that. If I write a post on the main post status blog, I can get a few thousand people typically to read those. So then saying like, okay, well this thing I'm writing is just for 300 people. You got to get over that concept, and also honestly to remember like, well, those 300 people all gave me at least $99, and they're, to be frank, more important than the 3,000 people or however many that would read a public post. But also, I just try to cater it to who it's gonna be important for and how broad that message needs to be. And that's how I try to approach it. But I mean, to be honest, I take the private content very, very seriously. I want to make sure I'm getting that out 4.5 times a week, and I want to make sure that every time they open it, that they're impressed with what they find, because I want to keep that open rate over 80%. And so far, that's been the case. It's 80 to 85% open rate and like 40% click rate. And I'm sending that to people that are core developers, lead developers of WordPress, leaders at the companies around WordPress, and it's extremely important to me that that is high quality content. On the public side, I have the same goal that it needs to be high quality content, but I focus on potentially a broader appeal. So if I think something is long form and for more of everyone, I am in the dashboard now, by the way, like the other WordPress news widget on WordPress. So maybe like more site owner-y versus like make my living with WordPress is the short answer. After I give you a really long answer.
You could have just given that first.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that was good to hear.
It's an ongoing debate internally. Let's put it that way.
I'm sure.
All right.
So, I've got a question for you, Brian, here. I'm curious because we talk about, you making the switch. You had this awesome free blog for a long time that a lot of us in the community highly valued, and then announced that you're going to begin charging, and it's like many, many others who will move into monetizing something they've been offering, where maybe a plugin developer might say, I've got this plugin and I could just start selling it, or I could make a pro version that has additional features than don't exist now. It's very much like I'm sure your thought process for Post Status was, if I want to do this full time, should I start charging for it, or create additional aspects to the site that I charge for, or things like that. So very interesting. But my question is, did you experience any backlash at all? Anything negative, or anyone concerned about losing out somehow?
Not really. It's really hard to complain about something that was previously free becoming not going away, but just being a little less often.
I don't know if that's true. Seems like a lot of people don't have any trouble complaining about free plugins.
Yeah, I think content's a little different because when content goes away, you just don't get any more of it. When a free plugin stops being developed, someone probably was relying on that, and I think content can be, if someone's really focusing on it and the content's really good, it can be just as valuable as a plugin that you rely on your website. But if it goes away, really, people have a lot of content to choose from in their life, so they have to be adamant to say, like, I'm going to read this. And there are replacements of the free content on Post Status, and I'm not trying to cater to everyone. I'm not trying to cater to every site owner. I'm trying to cater to people that are really nerdy or really big fans or make their living off of WordPress. That's pretty niche, and most of those people, eventually, if they really want it, or if enough smart people tell them that something's good, they'll just buy it. $99 is less than one billable hour for a lot of people in our community. So, I couldn't do this full time unless I was charging for it. So I don't even care if people complain. But no, I've gotten very few complaints.
Just curious.
If I have, they've been behind my back. So.
I'm sure there haven't been any. Don't worry.
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm kind of to piggyback on that last question. I was wondering a little bit about if you think you have any real competition. There are others in the WordPress news space, of course, right? But I've heard you talk other places about how the audience for like WP Tavern, for instance, is really somebody different than what you've just described as your ideal. Somebody who makes their money during the day with WordPress. Do you think was that a niche that you felt was completely unfilled? Or is there a little bit of competition there that you can think of?
There are overlaps between my site and other sites, just like anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so take WP Tavern for instance. That's one that people like to compare it to, and we both cater to the WordPress news segment, but they're creating WordPress news that they want to be applicable to a very broad audience, to site owners and people that make their living off of WordPress, and they publish everything for free. Some of it's short form, some of it's long form. But it's different. It's just we don't really compete. A lot of people that read WP Tavern religiously would never really care to look at Post Status. A lot of people that open and love everything that I put on Post Status won't look at almost anything on WP Tavern. There is probably more overlap with some other sources, some other potentially businessy blogs or podcasts or company blogs that maybe are really transparent about what they do day to day. But you still have to go to those, and they're all a little more catered. I'm general to the people that make their living off of WordPress in that sense. It can be developer, designer, business topics. I'm not just business like Matt Report podcast.
Yeah.
Or things like that. But if people read a lot of different sources, it's because they just are so addicted, and if they see a little overlap, that's not going to be a problem. However, I have a lot of people that really unsubscribed or stopped visiting some of the others because what my job is to take everything, get the best out of it, and deliver that. And that on a daily basis might be 3 to 6 articles, and require various levels of additional input. What I get out of people's streams are here's 17 plugins to install for X or something. I'm getting that type of noise out of the way, and a lot of people appreciate that enough to where they just stop looking at other things and trust me to filter it for them. And that's why I try to be really careful about what I put in the newsletter, because I don't want to lower people's expectations of quality if they click on a link that I put in the newsletter. Unless I put a link in there where I say, this is seriously awful, look at it from a humorous perspective. Which I do very rarely.
Okay.
Or this is my sponsor, check them out.
Yeah, I mean, with the sponsor stuff, I do like them, and I recommend their stuff. I cover them. That's actually why I have 12 partners, because I could have done less for more money. I could have done more and lowered the quality of the sponsor that I accepted. 12 was kind of a magic number to be able to lose one. Like if I piss somebody off because I cover them in a way they don't like, that's too bad. But the people that are sponsors are high quality people. If they do something that deserves being covered in a negative light, they probably know it, and they're not going to be upset with me. But it is an interesting line. You have to be willing to cover your sponsors sometimes, and there's challenges in any publishing organization where you're trying to balance those things. But in the end, if it's news, it's news, so I got to cover it.
Right. Last one I have for you before you turn it over is I'm interested to hear about feedback on post status. That's surprising, So maybe a twofold question. Can you tell us what's, based on all the feedback you've gotten from, both folks, subscribing to the paid membership and also free, just kind of across the board, what's the kind of the most surprising positive feedback you've gotten, and also the most surprising, we'll call it constructive criticism you've gotten back as well?
Sure. This is a pretty hard one. From a positive standpoint, I did a survey early on when there were maybe 100 members or 150, I don't know, something like that. And I asked people about whether they would be interested in a forum or a Slack channel or something like that. About 50% of the people said that they were interested in it, and they thought it would be a great idea. And since then, I decided to implement that one because it was a pretty decent amount of people. I didn't do the forum route because I wanted something more conversational, something more water cooler-esque. And Slack was a thing that became something that a lot of people joined for after that. So not only was it something that a lot of people were interested in, but it became this fulfilled need where people were seeking something more real-time, conversational, but not necessarily permanent, to have conversations on different topics, and that has been a super successful feature. However, I am beholden to whatever Slack decides. Like if they did away with free accounts, I would be super screwed, as an example. So it's interesting. But so far it's been really successful, and that was based on feedback. I didn't really think about it until some people emailed me and were like, hey man, where can we have better conversations? And then I was like, well, maybe we can do a forum or a Slack channel, but I was afraid of a ghost town with a forum. I wasn't thrilled about the permanence for people to open up. And the Slack channel worked out really well, and it's been really fantastic. Some people are just lurkers. Some people come in every now and then, but there's a lot of activity in there every single day. It's a great little water cooler. As far as negative feedback, there are some things where I really haven't automated stuff yet, and it's a feature that I've promised, and I'm not necessarily doing as well as I should be. For example, for the second time now, I have quite a few profiles that people have submitted their profile to be on the post status directory, and that was a feature that it was kind of an add-on feature, and I thought this is kind of cool, and I mostly wanted to use it for a taxonomy for linking Andrew Nason to all the posts about Andrew Nason or whatever. It turns out people really like those profiles and they want to see theirs, and I didn't automate the publishing of those. They go into a queue and then I have to approve them, and that's a lot of freaking work. Yeah. So I have 60 in the queue right now that I have to go through, and I'm not doing a great job of prioritizing that because every time I get through 10 of them, 10 more come in, which is a good problem, but also I got to get my game together. And some of the feedback I've gotten is, "Hey, Brian, when are those profiles going up, man? You know, like, hey, you know, I gave you $99, put my profile up," and it is completely valid, and it's one of the areas where I got to turn that around ASAP. So I'm trying to figure out different ways to do that, whether it's to have a virtual assistant to go through those every time someone new joins, because there's a number of manual tasks that are required for managing the site, and it's something that I do every day. Inviting people to Slack is a manual process, so if I miss an invite to Slack, then I'm screwing up. And I try to hit those within minutes, because Slack's API is not open for invites right now, so I can't script inviting someone to Slack. So there's some challenges like that with manual activities that are required on a daily basis, that when your goal is to discover, write, and send out fresh content, all these site management, business management, customer management, that stuff gets really freaking hard, as product people will understand and appreciate.
So I got a quick question for you. I'm looking at your site now and looking at the the club options or the club benefits, and I just wondered if maybe you give us an example of what you mean by members-only resources and maybe exclusive member deals, maybe one example of each.
Sure. For the deals, those are deals from the partners, and so far they are. So this is one of those areas on the club side. It says like this list is growing, and that's because these are two areas where I've got some of them locked down and some of them not. So I'm trying to make sure I have all these deals in place. But for example, one of them is 20% off of a site SEO review by Yoast, which is worth more than the $100 that someone pays for post status. Another example is 20% off MigrateDB Pro, or $100 off of the Theme Foundry Pro membership. So if you just took advantage of the deals, it'd be worth more than the membership itself. But I don't have all 12 of them set yet. But what I'm doing right now is when people ask me about one, I make sure that I get that deal for them. For the resources, the two you see are the only two that are there. They're not mapped. I have them mapped out for the public ones. A lot of them are in draft. The resources are a second half of the year push, and the reason for that is I'm actually not using a members plugin in combination with WooCommerce right now. There's a members plugin that has been in development since before post status launched that I wanted to utilize, and it is in beta 4 right now. So I can't easily make within a certain custom post type some stuff free and some stuff paid. And right now I haven't invested as much into writing the resources because I want to make them members only, but I want some stuff to always be free. Like the difference between WordPress and Automatic, I just want that for every tech journalist ever that gets it wrong every single time. And also, like, if I do a series of WordPress resources on how to utilize the WordPress REST API, I want one of those or two of those to be free, and then I want others that go more in depth that are paid. So that's a real big second half of the year push, and that's another benefit of these memberships being yearly and not monthly, because it allowed me to distribute the efforts that I'm putting into it over the whole year and not everything be in place right away.
Wow.
I definitely worked hard on the MVP because I started December 19th on building this sucker and then launched it on January 21st. So I had New Year's and Christmas and all that stuff in between. And that included a redesign of the website and complete implementation of everything else you see currently. So it was a lot of work. So I squeezed as much as I could before the launch, but that was a hard deadline because it was the first day of Pressnomics. So I launched it and then took a shower, went to the airport, and flew to Pressnomics, which is not something I would recommend.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, it looks amazing. and I think everything turned out all right in the end. So good job.
Thanks.
All right, so I was wondering, and I'm always a little bit curious about this because I'm not somebody who writes about anything in WordPress. I rarely blog, although I know it's awesome. But for someone like yourself, who's creating all this content, what goes into determining what you're going to write about, and how do you like make this decision? And also, more specifically, what I'm very curious about is what are those things that you are not super particularly interested in or excited about writing about, but feel pretty strongly that your audience wants you to write about? Can you talk about those?
Oh, I'm going to go with the first question first. So when I write, how do I decide what to write about? I have a number of audiences that I would say I try to cater to. And actually, I have a taxonomy. It's actually the way I'm using tags on the website. Is someone a designer, a developer, a site owner? Let me see what the other ones are. Slow WordPress admin. A business owner, or is it just applicable to everyone? When I write something for the club members, the first person that I really have on my mind is someone, by the quantity, is someone that does client work full time, but with a close second, somebody that either has a WordPress product or service that they monetize. Oftentimes, those same people are also core contributors, and also I have a number of WordPress core or WordPress leads, like Nathan or Helen or somebody like that. So there's this really broad variety of people that are reading. So I try to write something in the sense of, think of it like this. Mark, you have a product, and Kyle, you do have a product. Who has client work here? Anybody? Kyle, you do client work too.
That's right.
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so Kyle and Mark y'all are two really good examples. Kyle, you have a new product. Mark, you have a pretty established product. And Kyle, you're doing client work. But out of the five of us, some of us have probably done some track tickets too. And I really want to appeal to all of these senses. The one that's a little harder to appeal to is designer, because I'm a designer in the broadest sense of the word. I designed post status, and I've done client work in my day where a designer was not involved. But but I'm not a designer in the sense that my friend David Hickox, who's a terrific designer, would call a designer. David works with Modern Tribe and has built some absolutely beautiful websites, and I worked with him for about 2 years here locally in Birmingham. I'm not a designer the way David's a designer, but I do have an appreciation for good typography. I have an appreciation for certain design topics, and that's probably the hardest one to write about because people do like it, developers like it, product makers like it, but they aren't necessarily, like me, most of my members probably aren't designers at the core. So that would probably be the hardest topic to write about.
So I was wondering too, like whether there were topics, maybe not necessarily that are hard about, so it's a good way of getting around that. But if there were anything that you were just like, oh, I kind of begrudge this task a little bit, but I feel like I've got to write about this.
I can give you one more. One more is hosting.
Okay.
It is such a competitive market.
Oh, yeah.
And I genuinely think quite a few players are working really hard at being good WordPress hosts. But it's such a taboo market because so many people are just pimping hosting affiliate links. And covering it in an opinionated fashion. I do everything in an opinionated fashion. I'm not trying to hide my opinions about hosting. So covering it in an opinionated fashion and balancing this is some goofy marketing thing versus this is truly innovative, or this is truly unique, or this is interesting because they're growing so much, or they acquired someone. That is a really hard thing to decipher and filter. And a host might get upset if they have something that they think's the bee's knees and it's not. And you call it out as such. So it's a tough topic to cover, but it's one I cover, but I would prefer to talk about hosting a little less than I probably do.
Good answer.
I'm starting to get really choppy. I don't know if it's at my end or at yours, but yeah, hosting is really the thing about hosting is we get asked many times also about hosting, and you can never be 100% right about hosting ever. So we try to avoid it as well. So let's get into WordCamps. What was talk about like your first WordCamp and the kind of experiences you had there, and what where you've gone from there.
I switched beers, if y'all didn't notice, but now I'm rocking my WP Y'all koozie.
Awesome.
I prepared ahead of time. It's 7 o'clock here, so it's beer 30, and I'm drinking a Pinner Throwback IPA from Oscar Blues. It's a great beer. Great beer. So WordCamp Birmingham was my first WordCamp. That was my connection there. 2011, I don't know, something like that. I missed the one the year before that because there was an Auburn-Clemson game that I was going to, and I was not working full-time in WordPress yet. So my first WordCamp was WordCamp Birmingham, and I co-organized and spoke at it in addition to attending it. It was an enlightening experience to see the number of people that have an interest in WordPress but didn't really know very much about WordPress. I probably dug way more into WordPress than your average person that gets up and running with it. But it was fascinating to see the people in marketing organizations, or people in marketing departments of big companies, things like that. People that are DIYers trying to just get their blog up or get their little store up or something, that go to a WordCamp because they're just ready to learn, and they are so eager to hear about ways to be better at what they're doing. And I think the WordCamp system and the whole conference system going on in our world is really awesome. One of the best things that Matt Mullenweg and the WordPress Foundation have ever done, and I'm totally in awe of how big that is for WordPress, the platform, having events in almost every big city or decent-sized city in the country or in the world. There's WordCamps in almost every country.
Yeah, that's definitely amazing, and it is getting to be pretty interesting. So you've attended, as I understand it, a number of other non-WordCamp events as well that center around WordPress. So I'd be interested to get your take on kind of the whole big picture of like WordPress-related events. That seems like the landscape is kind of changing a little bit, growing definitely. Where do you see it going?
WordPress, the platform, is the fun thing to talk about. WordPress being used in non-purely CMS sense from a corporate website or blog or something like that. I'm really, really into journalism stuff, and I think WordPress as a tool for journalists to get really serious about their digital presence is really interesting. The way organizations are basing everything they do off of WordPress is fascinating. The way journalism is changing in general, so that you can be a developer and be considered a journalist, and you're sitting next to the feature reporter and you're designing a beautiful layout for a story, and you're part of the story. and you're enabling a way of telling stories that previously was either incredibly expensive or incredibly difficult, and now we can just create these incredible experiences online for telling a story, and I think it's really awesome. I think there's some good conferences too that a lot of people are getting into. I love reading Nieman Lab. Nieman Lab is a journalism and digital collision. The director of the Nieman Lab is a guy named Joshua Benton, who actually interviewed once on Post Status, and he's a WordPress nerd. He built the entire Nieman Lab website, but he's a journalist at his core, and I love stuff like that. I love the way WordPress is so important to industries like journalism, but it's equally important to a whole bunch of others and becoming more important in others, like e-commerce, for example. It's just incredible the various directions people are taking the platform, and I think simultaneously it's really important for WordPress to be able to both be simpler and easier to use for a huge segment of the population, and at the same time to be more extensible and more powerful for other applications, so that WordPress can both compete against Squarespace and compete against Magento or a proprietary CMS in a media organization or something like that. I think the way we balance those things is important and fascinating challenges to observe.
Amazing. That's quite an undertaking, and a good answer. So, what events are you going to be present at in 2015? Where can people bump into? You mentioned your meetup group hasn't been super active locally, but I imagine you'll get out of the house at least a couple times this year, and we can bump into you.
Yeah, hopefully later in the year, wherever and whenever WordCamp US is, I'll be there. My more immediate concerns are I have a baby that's due on June 18th. So a little before that, aka now, until we get settled in with life with a baby, I won't be at many events. However, I will definitely be at a couple events later in the year, and hopefully we'll be able to meet folks there.
I hope so. I gotta say that I went to my first WordCamp in San Francisco this past year, and that was where I met you, and I just have to say that was a good experience. I met a lot of people at WordCamp in San Francisco. It was a big deal for me, a total nobody in the community, and there were a lot of people there that I really was looking forward to meet. Your name was on that list, and so for anybody watching or anybody who hasn't met Brian, I encourage you to go and talk to him, because he's really, really awesome. And it really kind of made my day, which is a big deal when I'm at WordCamp San Francisco, for you to be so open and receptive and go out of your way to kind of sit down and have a chat. That was pretty meaningful. So,
man, there is such a small difference between the people with the most experience and the least experience in the WordPress world, and you can get up to speed in like no time if you put the time into it. Andrew Nason was basically introduced to WordPress in 2009, and he like dug deep, and he probably knows more about WordPress than anybody in the world today. And probably multiple of us in this room were playing with WordPress before 2009. And one of the special things about WordPress is the accessibility of people within the ecosystem. The first person that ever answered any question for me was Otto, who now works for Matt Mullenweg and is just a ridiculously influential person on the project. And he just answered this random forum question on WP Tavern for me when I knew absolutely no one. And stuff like that continues to blow my mind, the accessibility of everyone in the WordPress community. I think we owe that to pay it forward to others.
I completely agree. And it did inspire me as well. That's now become a central part of my focus when I attend WordPress events as well, is to essentially treat everyone like Brian Krogsgard treats me, and go out of your way to welcome people with open arms in the community that we've been welcomed into.
Thanks.
So, anyway, just we're about the wrap-up point here, so probably the last question here for me. do you have any recommendations of, and I'm sure you probably do if you thought about it, some really great people that we could ask to get on future episodes of this show?
Oh, there's so many good people. Somebody that's been on my mind today is Dan Cameron. He is the developer of Sprout apps, and he has a plugin that I think is fascinating that's really quite mature called Sprout Invoices, and it's a invoicing and time tracking integration thing for people that are interested in like self-hosted invoicing and get rid of FreshBooks or QuickBooks Online, that kind of stuff, and you want to manage it yourself. I think Dan would be a really interesting person to talk to.
That's a great recommendation. Thanks, Brian. So to wrap things up here, this has been an amazing, amazing episode. I wanted to just first ask if there was anything else finally that you wanted to share, any questions maybe you didn't cover, or anything pertinent that you think is worth sharing with the audience at this time.
I've got nothing.
Okay. Is there anything you can share about how and where people can go to sign up and join Post Status, and who do you recommend? Just drops what they're doing and go to sign up right now.
Yeah, if you make money with WordPress, or if you are seeking to engage with people that are doing awesome stuff in the WordPress world, then go to poststatus.com/club, and you can join there, and I would certainly appreciate it. And I will work my hardest to serve you well over the next year.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, Brian. It's been an awesome episode, a great experience talking with you. I congratulate you on the upcoming new addition to your family.
Thank you.
I really hope some point later in the year we get to bump into each other in person and share a beer together. And just thanks for making our day here.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us, Brian. It was a good one.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye.